Jim, welcome. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining me today. A lot of discussion here about digital transformation that the C services are undergoing, modernization efforts that they're undertaking. What are you seeing as the successful components of those kinds of transformations?
Great question, Francis, and thanks again for having me. So I think some of the components, what they can really do is start to take some of the best practices that are happening in the commercial sector, where we can start to really strengthen the private and public partnerships. One of the things that I'm starting to see is commercialization has really kind of taken stride mobility as a great example, using mobile products as a way to get the workforce to be able to work anywhere, be able to really kind of complete their missions, right, wherever they may be. And I think the components really haven't fully embraced mobile overall. There's pockets of government that have, but there's still, I think, some legacy archaic architecture that still exists, both from a cloud perspective as well as even from a mobility standpoint. And I think if we start to strengthen some of these private-public partnerships, I think we can get the components to modernize relatively quickly.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think they haven't embraced that mobility that you just described? What's the holdup?
I think it really has to do with being able to be comfortable with the security of mobility. Mobile has really kind of come under the attack, especially over the last 10 years. It's now really starting to become the entry point into many organizations. We've seen groups like Octopus, Lapsus, as many others, where mobile is now kind of that entry point in holding the keys to the kingdom. It has multi-factor authentication capability. It's got the tokens that are getting to the devices. And more importantly, you got to think most of us have email on our mobile devices. So if phishing in its various forms, whether it's phone calls or SMS, if they are starting to target mobile, well, how do you protect that? And I think that's where the struggle might be as far as the mobile is concerned. From a cloud perspective, I think it's still the components are struggling with identifying what data exists, classified, unclassified, what security controls are around those different data concepts, and then more importantly, who's got access to them.
Yeah. Is it as critical to know where the data is located? And I'm not even necessarily talking about the physical location, but all of those endpoints where that data may be accessed or may be currently accessed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not just even the context of where is the data, but also what's going on with whatever element that data sits on. What's going on with it? Is it up to patch level? Is there, questionable activity happening on that environment? Is your antivirus going off, right? I think if we start taking a look at some of these contextual elements, from a security standpoint, that's valuable information. Am I all of a sudden logging in from Japan, but yet I usually log in from Texas? Raises a lot of questions.
Yeah. Do you see the organizations that you're talking to becoming more receptive to learning about what private sector, what commercial organizations are doing and trying to apply those where appropriate, or is that still not happening as much?
Again, I think it's happening in pockets. And we start to see elements of like the system integrators who are trying to bring in multiple vendors to help with these modernization elements. But again, it's not fully taken place. And I do think it has to do with just the fact of the comfortability of security of these new components.
Mm-hmm. What are you following trend-wise? What do you see in the next 6 months, year, 2 years that the people in this room, people at this conference, people in the C services more broadly, and across the federal government should be watching?
AI, obviously, one of the biggest topics right now. Interestingly enough, I think data sovereignty around AI and what controls are in place, like what kind of information are you providing these various AI tools? Does it have a phone home ability? Is there, an ability to have a closed-off environment, right? That's definitely going to be a hot topic. But also figuring out how do I operationalize AI to where it really makes a difference. Yeah. There's a lot of vendors who are talking about AI, and it's fantastic because it's developing a lot of new innovation. But we still need to figure out how do I best operationalize it to where it's meaningful to my mission. That is where I think a lot of the groups are struggling today. Another trend that we're seeing, again, I mentioned this earlier, but mobile is being a primary target for threat actors going after. That's something that we're seeing increase significantly, especially even over the last year. And then on top of that, I think, again, following context of your endpoints, of your data, of the identity that people are utilizing as a login mechanism, whether it's device, whether it's username and password, whether it's a token, like a YubiKey, whatever that identity is, having the context, I think, also needs to be more as a priority in order to help safeguard not just national security, but all of these modernization efforts.
Jim, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today.
Francis, thank you again.